Okay, lesson 5.6a, college algebra, determinants, and Cramer's rule. This is going to get a little bit complicated here as we look into different things, and hopefully I can explain things in such a way that you may find that it's a little bit easier than the way the book explains it. So we'll see what I can do with it. First section here is called the determinants of square matrices. Alright, so that is the new word of the day. We'll have a couple of these. Determinants. And this is of a 2 by 2 matrix. Okay, this only works on 2 by 2s, and then we'll get and teach you the method of finding the matrix or the determinants of any square matrix. So right now we'll do a matrix like 2, -3, -4, and 1. Alright, so there's our matrix. If I am interested in a determinant, what I'll do is I will write that differently. I will write it like this, with just a line instead of the little bracket. That means that I'm asking for the determinant. And the determinant is basically cross-multiplying. Okay, and once you cross-multiply, then you subtract. So it's this one first. So 2 times 1 minus -3 minus 4 is 12. So 2 minus 12 equals -10. Alright, notice it's 2 minus 12. Okay, because -4 times -3 is a positive 12, and you always subtract. So you take this one and subtract the product of this. So since the product of this is positive, it would be 2 minus 12. If one of these was positive and we took 4 times -3, we'd get a -12. Then we'd subtract that, we'd have 2 minus a -12, so it'd be 2 plus 12. So just remember, you take this diagonal minus this diagonal, and you get a -10. And that's the way you find the determinant of a 2 by 2 matrix. Okay, pretty easy. Now what we're going to do is spend the rest of our time talking about matrices that are square, 3 by 3s, 4 by 4s, 5 by 5s, but are not 2 by 2s. Alright, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to find 2 different things. And we're going to talk about each one of them. The book does a terrible job explaining these. We're going to talk about cofactors, and we're going to talk about minors. Okay, so we're going to talk about both of those here, and one is dependent on the other. So let's start with the minors. Alright, so oftentimes we first find our minors and then our cofactors in order to evaluate determinants. Okay, so let's go through talking about minors first. So let's look at example 2. Okay, so what we have is we have the matrix written right there, and they want us to find the minor of certain elements here. So when you find a minor, you're finding the minor of a particular number. So find the minor of the number that's in that position or this position, etc. And the way they determine whether you're looking for the minor or not is they use the letter M, and they say look for the minor in the first row, first column. So we're looking for the minor of that number. Now, understanding what minor is at this point isn't necessary. Just understanding that you're trying to find the minor. Okay, so this is what we do. The minor will be, and this is a 3 by 3 matrix. This only works for 3 by 3s. Okay, so to find a minor, you look at 1, 1. Okay, so we're talking about this -8 right here, position. So when it says that, what we do is we cross out that row in that column. So 1, 1, row 1, column 1, and we throw that out. What we have left is a negative 6, 7, negative 3, 5. Now we have a 2 by 2 matrix, and we can find the minor of that fairly simple. We take this minus this. So these turn to a plus, and we get a negative 9. Okay, let's do another one. Let me see if I can erase all this. Okay, let's do a minor of row 2, column 3. So again, we cross out row 2, we cross out column 3, and we write what's left. And it's a 2 by 2, multiply, minus 0 equals 24. So the minor of 2, 3 is the number 24. And that's all there is to finding the minors. Okay, so now let's go to cofactors. Now cofactors, what they do is they give you this formula. So the cofactor is, and the letter A, capital letter A, stands for cofactor, equals negative 1 I plus j minor ij. Alright, so they give you that formula, and we're going to use that formula, but I hate that formula. So we're going to not get rid of it, but we're just going to talk about what that formula actually does. All that formula actually does is tell you, or finding the cofactor is actually finding the minor and then determining whether that minor is positive or negative. If the minor is positive or if it's negative, that's what the cofactor is. The cofactor is just the minor determining whether it's going to be positive or negative. And then once you determine that, it becomes the cofactor, if that makes any sense. All right, so best thing to do is try one of these and see what we come up with. So for example 3, it says look at the matrix that we have there, and we are going to find A, 1, 1. So it's saying find the cofactor of this number in this position. Okay, so what we do, that is going to equal, according to our formula, bottom of page 490, negative 1 I plus j. This is the I, this is the j. 1 plus 1 minor 1, 1, and that's what we're looking for here. So what is the minor of 1, 1? Well, we found that earlier. Remember, we did this, so it's actually negative 1, 1 plus 1, and that minor is negative 6, 7, negative 3, 5. Okay, so to find the cofactor, we do this to the minor. Okay, so there's the minor, 1, 1. So the minor is negative 6, 7, negative 3, 5. Looks like this. So this is going to be negative 1, and this will be negative 30 minus negative 21. Okay, so we get negative 1. Let's go ahead and just put a 2 up there, square that. And that is going to be times negative 9. What is negative 1 squared? Positive 1. Positive 1 times negative 9 is negative 9. So that is the cofactor. Alright, so you find the minor, you find the cofactor. What are you going to do with them? Well, later on we're going to actually use these things. Right now we're just trying to learn how to do them. So let me kind of reiterate some things. Here was our matrix. This A here says we're finding the cofactor. That's what the letter A means. The cofactor is always this times the minor. So we found the minor, okay, by knowing that it was 1, 1. So we cross out column 1, row 1, and then these 4 right here are what we use to find the minor. So we keep going. We find the minor is -9. We multiply it by this here, which -1 to the second power gives me a positive number. Okay, now here is a key thing to determine whether or not your minor is going to be positive or negative. That's all this part does, is determines whether our minor is going to change signs. All right, so let's look at this. This is always going to be -1. This is part of the formula. This here is the row plus the column. If this is a 1 plus 1, that's going to give us a 2. Any number that's even will always make -1 a positive answer. So if this is -1, 2 plus 2, that would be -1 to the 4th power, which is going to be a positive 1, right? So whenever these two numbers add up to be an even number, your answer, this -1 to that even number, will be a positive 1. Whenever these two numbers are added up and give you an odd number, this -1 is going to be negative. So if this were a -1 to the 1 plus 2, that would be -1 to the 3rd power, which is -1. So what this does is, all this does is determines whether or not our minor is going to change its sign or not. Okay? So notice here, we have a -9 here for an answer. Does this -1 squared change the sign? No, it does not, because this becomes a -1 times -1 is +1 times -9 is -9. If this would have been a 3, then this would have been a -1 times -9, which is a +9, so it would change its sign. So this is a very important part here, so you don't really even have to use the formula. You just add the row and the column that you're looking at. In this one we are looking at -8, row 1, column 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, even number, so our answer is going to stay the same. If we were looking at like this number here and trying to find the cofactor, we would look at this and be row 2, column 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 is an odd number. It means that our answer would switch signs. Okay, so that's what it means. So whatever number you're looking at, whichever element they're asking you to find, look at the column, look at the row, add those two up. If you get an odd number, then your minor will change signs. If you get an even number, your minor will not change signs. Okay? So let's look at a couple more of these just to make sure you've got this, and we'll continue this with the next video.